welcoming everyone. And we are waiting in expectation very soon for Cheryl Chambers to join us, Associate Dean for Multicultural Affairs and the Black History Month Committee co-chair. And we have been working together, Cheryl and I, all semester to put together this program. And so in lieu of that, and once Cheryl is able to join Zoom, which will be in short order, we'll move on to the next part of our program, and that is our invocation by the Reverend Brenda D. Ford, chaplain and director of Protestant Campus Ministries on our side, my side of the campus, and also on the medical side. So, Chaplain Ford, if you could please unmute yourself.
Please join me in prayer. Mother and Father of all creation, holy and transforming God, fall fresh upon this assembly. The Spirit of Sankofa says, I look back at the sacrifices made and I press on. This hour we bring ourselves into your presence. We offer our prayers, our praise, and our supplications. We thank you for the rich African-American legacy that has come before us. We remember the songs, stories, and fiery hope of men and women, soul friends, musicians, great orators, artists, scientists, builders, entrepreneurs, and innovators. We thank you for the resilience and courage of your people who, despite their suffering, recognize that your purpose for all humanity is justice, generosity, and compassion. As we open up this Black History Month Assembly from this virtual space and move forward with our celebration today and throughout our lives, I pray that the blessing of grace and the Spirit of Sankofa go with us and empower us to not only be, but thrive, and not only look, but see, to not only assume, but to know we have work to do. We are reminded of all that remains and is happening in our fragmented and fallen world, which is still compounded by racism. Lead us, guide us along the way as we advocate and press on for justice, healing, and transformation. We invite all you have called to this assembly to join the conversation, to partner with brothers and sisters of African descent as we continue to hear from you and embark on the journey to make a difference in our world, not only for ourselves, but for all of God's children. Oh Lord God, I ask that you bless the speaker of the hour, Dr. Julieanna L. Richardson. May you go into her storehouse and bless the word that she has prepared, the message that she has prepared for us at this time and at this hour. It is all that I call wholly upon, and thank you for this opportunity. Let us all say amen, ashe, and namaste.
Thank you very much for that word, and we hope that it reaches the ears and hearts and minds of all who within its hearing, and we thank you all for being here. We would like this time to play President McInnis's welcome and message.
Welcome everyone to this year's Black History Month opening ceremony. It is a tumultuous time in our country and our world, one where certain words we use to describe our lived experience, unprecedented, for example, can feel like they've lost some of their meaning. But it is in this tumultuous time that the need for shared tradition and understanding is more urgent than ever. This month, we join together to celebrate the experiences, accomplishments, and contributions of African Americans in everything from education to business, politics to the arts, academia to the military, medicine to entertainment, scientific research to advocacy for a better world. The concept behind this year's Black History Month theme, Sankofa, Black Creativity, originated in Ghana, West Africa, and can be translated to It is not taboo to go back and fetch what you forgot. What a perfect theme for this year's celebration. We are at a moment in the United States of multiple disruptions, but we can rise to meet this moment if we are mindful of our past and where we have come from. As we honor and reflect on the achievements of African Americans, both past and present, and listen to stories that too often go untold, this month marks an opportunity to join together in an appreciation for our shared humanity and a relearning of our basic values and goals. Let us listen to the voices of those who are working toward a society free from systemic racism and racial inequality. Let us be a campus that communicates, one that is full of people both interested and committed to getting to know one another. Let us be a community that learns one another's histories and experiences as we work together to build a more welcoming and inclusive environment. As we'll hear today, the Stony Brook Libraries is incredibly lucky to be in its 20th year of coordinating with the HistoryMakers Digital Archives, our nation's largest African American video oral history collection, highlighting nearly 2,700 individuals who have made a significant impact in our country. The HistoryMakers is a rich resource to help us learn from the past, celebrate our present, and move forward to create a better future. The past month alone has demonstrated the challenges that lie ahead. On January 6th, we saw an embodiment of what fear, mistrust, hatred, and division can lead to as the United States Capitol building was under siege. Yet just weeks later, at the presidential inauguration, National Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman made our country, for a moment, stand still in awe. Awe at the beauty of her words, at the hope of her message, and at the sheer magnitude of what art can do. For those of us dedicated to learning, education, and creativity, this is an especially galvanizing thing. So I'd like to close with a few lines from Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb, which I believe is a magnificent exploration of why we celebrate and what we're celebrating. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Welcome to the 2021 Black History Month opening ceremony. I look forward to our wonderful speakers today and to honoring this tradition for years to come.
I'm going to ask Angelina Gill, who will be singing for us the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Hello, everybody. Happy Black History Month. I believe the lyrics will be shown of the song. I'm singing the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. So I'm just going to read the first paragraph to give a little bit of insight and background for the song. So it's lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. So if you know the song, which a lot of people do. Since we're on Zoom, it's easier. You can just feel free to join me and, sing along with me. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Wonderful. Wow. Wow. So wonderful. Thank you so much. You didn't need the words or any accompaniment. That was just wonderful. But we did see the lyrics, and I hope everybody had a chance to. I thought I heard somebody else singing too. Thank you. Thank you so much. Next in the program, we have words from Judy Brown Clark, Vice President of Equity and Inclusion, and Stony Brook University's illustrious Chief Diversity Officer.
I think I just want to take for a moment, Angelina, when she's saying the beauty of her name, Angelina, angel, what a voice of an angel. And I so appreciate that. And don't we understand that music is pretty much the universal way in which our soul talks to other souls? So thank you so much to the co-chairs, Cheryl Chambers and Zebulon Maletsky, and all the members of the Black History Month Planning Committee for your leadership in framing this year's celebration and the lens of Sankofa, Black creativity. As stated, Sankofa it literally means it is not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. Therefore, Sankofa teaches us that we must reach back and gather the best lessons of what our past has taught us so that we can apply them to creative solutions moving forward. The sky is not the limit, the mind is. Valuing historical lessons coupled with an unquenchable thirst of knowledge reflects the educational mission and core values here at Stony Brook. We are embracing the importance of words, telling your own story, and ensuring that other people's stories are told. These are the foundations of a collective understanding of who we are and who we want to be. My dear friend, Julieanna Richardson, is a scholar and a soul whisperer. again, a soul whisperer who has the extraordinary gift of having conversations with extraordinary people that are generational influencers that tell extraordinary stories that are grounded in their ordinary truth. We thank her for gifting us today with her knowledge, blessings, and light. And in the impactful words of Mary Lou Anderson, leaders are called to stand in that lonely place between the no longer and the not yet. The no longer and the not yet. It is in this place, Sankofa, where we're standing in this active state of history. We are not going back to normal. We're going forward to normal. A mindset of expectations are essential to manifestations. So please take this opportunity to open your mind to new knowledge, open your heart to meaningful inspiration. And now I'll turn it over to our beloved Interim Dean of Library Sciences, Dr. Shafiq Fazal. Peace.
Well, hello and very good afternoon to everyone. And a warm welcome. Yes, I would say literally a warm welcome to everyone, given all the snow we've been having. You know, as Judy was saying about the past and going forward, I'm very thrilled here that we're talking and we're highlighting a resource that really, in its true sense, deals with that, educating us of the past and helping us to move forward. Well, let me first say I'm very pleased to be joining this ceremony today as we celebrate the opening of Black History Month. But I'm even more pleased to see that today we are recognizing and raising awareness of an ever important information archive, the HistoryMakers archives. Embedded in our mission as libraries is to foster and encourage stewardship and subsequent access to information archives. As one author had put it, we're better equipped to embrace the future if we steward and learn from the past. And HistoryMakers Archives is truly one of those resources that shows us the vast diversity of African American contribution and achievements. In the past year, we witnessed significant civil unrest, and as a university, we all came together to take a stand against systemic racism. In the library, it wasn't anything less. Our faculty and staff came together as one unified voice against social injustice and racism. We had meaningful dialogues, we formed our anti-racism task force, and we came out with action items we want to take. And I'm saying all of that because in our efforts to continue building diverse collections that can help educate our users, we were thrilled at the opportunity when we partner with Dr. Clark, and truly appreciate her support in us as we move forward in acquiring the HistoryMakers archives. We're also very excited to collaborate with Dr. Miletsky and his group on the use and access of HistoryMakers archives. I want to give a special thanks to all the library faculty and staff who worked on making this resource available. It was truly a team effort, and we look forward to joining the Black History Month celebration with even more programming that we're planning in the library. Finally, I want to say I'm very excited that we have Dr. Richardson with us today, and I truly look forward to hearing all about her work with the archives. So with that, I want to welcome everyone and look forward to not only today's event and talk, but to a months-long celebration for Black history. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fazal. We are also looking forward to working with you as well. At this point, I'm going to hand off the baton to my co-chair, Cheryl Chambers, who will introduce our Benjamin Owusu and Dr. Patrice Nganang.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please excuse my picture here. There is some glitch that's going on with my laptop, and so video cannot be seen. Yes, so of course, Black History Month opening would not be complete without us hearing some spoken word. And so Benjamin Owusu is going to share his expression of Black History Month and Black creativity. Benjamin?
All right. Good afternoon, all. My name is Benjamin Owusu. And oh man, it is such an honor to be able to perform a spoken word piece at such a historic event like this. So thank you very much to the Black History Month Committee and all the attendees. Okay, so let's get into it. So this piece is titled A Letter. Dear future son and daughter, I have to tell you about the most historic year that I lived through, 2020. And no, I'm not talking about perfect vision. There was a world pandemic. Can you believe it? A world pandemic, a disease, a virus that killed many. COVID-19 and racism, I couldn't even tell the difference. I know only God pulled me through this far. This year should have been in the Guinness World Records. As I watched the COVID numbers spike, as I watched Black bodies bodied down, bruised brutally and buried, it was unbelievable. Can you believe it? Our breed was gasping for breath. He died breathless. A Black woman's body ached for rest. And then 8 blue bullets startled her to death. I couldn't believe it. What's funny is that George Floyd had COVID-19 and Breonna Taylor was fighting it. In this system, racism is the concrete you walk on. It's so embedded into our souls that a world pandemic knew the symptoms of what Black people have been facing for 400 years until now. Our people were chained, shackles around ankles, bleeding. Whips were whipped with bits of our flesh residue until bullets became our last name. A world pandemic knew the symptoms that our people have been facing for centuries. We had fever and chills from the endless rounds of whips and guns. As we were close to death, there was a shortness of breath. Fatigue plagued our bodies as we witnessed the Capitol insurrection. If they were our complexion, it would have been a Black genocide. Our muscles and body ached as we watched our people become food for the soil. I lost my taste and smell, and I couldn't sleep for days as the blood of my people crept up in the depths of the cracks in America. We had a headache as our brains could process no more. Our throat was sore from the constant movement of our lips explaining police brutality that I thought was brutally clear. And our nose was running as our soul cried tears it hasn't cried before. COVID-19 just stole the symptoms we have been facing for 400 years until now. And you're probably wondering, Papa, why are you telling us this? Well, I'm telling you this because this is the only true history you will probably ever get about 2020. McGraw-Hill sure won't mention it. So I need your undivided attention. In this world of grave division, it took the death of our kind to unite us together. We had to die for the world to recognize evil and peace. That's how much our blood means to this country. This is like the Christ effect. It united, so we are the true state. So my precious daughter and son, know that your value on this earth is worth more than 1,000,000 stars, planets, and earth combined. I love you so much. Hold on to God and your Blackness as if it's your last breath, because you are worth it. I wish I could say this face to face to you right now, but I can't face you right now. I refuse to see the tears flow down off of your precious faces right now as I tell you about the terror that this country faces right now. I love you so much. Celebrate your Blackness. You only have 1 month to do so. So I leave it in your hands to make it two, because you too are the future. Love, Dad. Thank you.
Wow.
Wow, very profound and very moving, and a realistic portrayal of the struggle, the impact, and the resiliency of African Americans in this country, in the backdrop of the history of this country. Thank you, Benjamin, for sharing that. And we're going to really marinate and contemplate and think about your words. Very powerful. We appreciate your expression. Thank you. So now we will hear from Dr. Patrice Nganang, who is the new chair of the Department of Africana Studies. And Black History Month is a partnership. Africana Studies engages in with various areas across the campus. And we're so pleased to have you here with us, Professor Nganang.
Yes, thank you very much for having us be here together. And I think it is impossible for me to walk into this party without congratulating all of you who are here, and particularly the committee of organizers. You really did a fantastic job. And a testimony of your work is indeed that we can be together at this moment. And maybe you've realized it already, the semester starts with this event. And it is a sign that everything can only be good going forward, because we may really remember that there was hatred on the streets, and there was fire on the streets, but there was also resistance on the streets. There was murder on the streets, and I'm talking about these last years. I'm talking about last year. I'm even talking about last month, maybe even last week, or even now. But at the same time, there is, and there has always been resistance on the streets. So there is snow, of course. If you look out, as like I do out of my window, you will see there's snow on the streets. But at the same time, we are here to celebrate. There is one particular thing about Blackness, which is, the culture of celebration, the culture of praise. And it is marked in many African names, for instance, names that are praise names. It's marked in many musical instruments that are instruments of praise. The talking drum, for instance. It is marked in many ways of talking, the praise of the body. It is marked in many ways of dressing, of building houses. It's a culture, a Black culture of praise. And I'm very happy that we are here in the sense of praising ourselves first, but also knowing that the future is our own making. Just to touch down on the beautiful archive we have access to, and a way of learning who we are, Black people, a way of learning who Black people are for those who are not Black, in terms of actually working to increase that archive with our own deeds, because we are all history makers. And if we remember that, then we can only be thankful and praise ourselves. Having said that, I really congratulate you again, and I say welcome back from a year, from a semester, from days of turbulence, and the future can only be bright. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Nganang. Huntley Spencer is with us here to introduce Julieanna Richardson. Huntley is president of our undergraduate student government, and so we'll give him this time to tell us about Dr. Richardson.
Thank you, Dean Chambers. I have the honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Julieanna L. Richardson, created a unique path to founding and heading up the largest national collection effort of African American video oral histories on record since the WPA slave narratives. Richardson graduated from Histories on Record. Richardson graduated from Brandeis University in 1976 with her BA and degree in theater arts and American Studies. Richardson received her JD degree in 1980s from Harvard Law School and began her career as a corporate lawyer at the law firm of Jenner and Block prior to serving in the 1980s as a cable administrator for the City of Chicago's Office of Cable Communications. The recipient of numerous honors and awards, Richardson has received 3 honorary doctorates of humane letters from Howard University, Dominican University, and her alma mater, Brandeis University. She was awarded the 2014 Legacy Award from Black Enterprise Magazine and was profiled in 2014's American Masters, The Boomers List, a PBS documentary and exhibition at the museum in Washington, D.C. Richardson is committed to be a preserving and a sharing force of this history and is leaving a unique and lasting legacy for generations to come. And we are very, very honored to have her speak at Stony Brook University.
From Smokey Robinson to Barack Obama, who is this woman who has curated over 3,000 interviews documenting the lives and experiences of Black Americans from all walks of life? Harvard-trained attorney and executive director and founder of the HistoryMakers, Julieanna Richardson is joining us today. I'm Melanie Formosa, your host. Julieanna, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here with you, Melanie. Thank you. That was a great intro, I want to say.
Oh, thank you, Julieanna. You were an actress, right? That was your starting point. What happened?
That was my starting point. Well, I really wanted a career on the stage, and my father, who I loved and adored, I'm a daddy's girl, had his sights on something else and really wanted me to go to law school. So I started out at Brandeis University as a theater major, but then by my sophomore year, I was American Studies and Theater.
Wow, so we have your dad to thank.
We have my father to thank in many, many, many ways, because essentially what we're doing is about American studies, and we're actually telling stories like theater.
You had a lot of life transitions. You went from theater to law school, getting a JD from Harvard, to then the HistoryMakers. How have you handled and navigated those turns in your life?
I've often thought of my life as a series of intense moments. I think many people would say that I'm a workaholic, but I've had to feel that I would lead a passion-filled life, and that I wanted to make a difference. And what I would say is that all roads really have led to where I am now, and all things that I've done in my life really prepared me for taking on this project.
How have you stayed so motivated, though, to give up what you were rooted in, for instance, law, to then completely change course?
I think that, the motivation, sometimes I think that I've been motivated by fear, fear of failure, but I also have been motivated to really make a difference in the world. I tell the story that grew up in a small town called Newark, Ohio, which is right outside of Columbus, the capital. And I was the only Black kid in my class in this town where there were 1,000 Blacks out of 50,000 whites. And the teacher asked us to talk about our family backgrounds, and everybody's hands went up, and I didn't know mine. And so that feeling of not knowing really stayed with me. I would call it haunted me in some respects. And I don't think I realized it as much about that until I was at my sophomore year at Brandeis University, doing research on the Harlem Renaissance and learning how much Black people had done, in the arts. And none of that had I known. None of the people that I came to know, like Langston Hughes and Countee Cullen and Lee Whipper and lots and lots of people. A man named Dick Campbell, who was a textbook, knew everything about Blacks in theater. And who I was lucky enough to interview, Butterfly McQueen, who had starred in Gone with the Wind. And it was a defining moment for me to find that I, as an African American, had this rich history that I knew nothing about. So I would say that a lot of passion to make a difference and to document this history is really what keeps me motivated.
Wow. So would you say that as an undergrad in college, and maybe even before that, as a child, as an adolescent, did you have an inkling that life was calling you to do something great?
No, I don't think so. I mean, as I grew up in a coal mining town outside of Pittsburgh for the first 9 years of my life. And no, I had no idea that this is what would happen. And so I think, a lot of life's journeys and paths, we don't know where those paths will take us. But I really believe that if someone can find passion in their life and they have the discipline to work hard, that almost anything in life is possible.
You must have faced challenges along the way, perhaps as a woman, as a Black woman. Did you ever feel that those challenges boosted your strength and your self-confidence, or did they hinder you only?
I think my self-confidence, I came out of being in a family that where I had a father who was a nurturing father, but they expected a great deal of me. But I also want to say that I have constantly, probably even to this day, feel the burdens of being a Black female and all that comes with it. I live in a world of inequities. I was taught to live in a world of inequities, but sometimes that gets old and you wonder sometimes. I remember starting out as a young lawyer thinking, when I get in my 60s, I will have the respect. And still, to this day, whether it's the project and just trying to raise the money, because when I first envisioned the project, we did a business plan and it said that we would have to raise $30 million. And my name wasn't Oprah Winfrey or Steven Spielberg. So I don't think a lot of people thought I was serious about that or that I could be successful with that. But we have raised $30 million and more.
Wow, that's incredible. As a lawyer, do you feel that your background in law has prepared you for this film series?
Yes, I won't say that. I would say that law very much was a very important part of me being successful with this. I think the combination, though, because I think that the greatest gift that someone could be given is to be creative. And so that has stayed with me my whole life. And on the other hand, I would not have been able to approach this project which I started on my dining room table when I was unemployed and without a job. And the stories that I'd done when I was your age came back to me, and the power of that. And I sat and started sketching things out and doing research. And so law definitely did play a role, but I think the creativity of my creative background also played an equally important role. And I want to say that because our main fundraiser is PBS TV taping. And had I not had that background, I would not have been able to produce the programs that we've done, and we've done now 36 of them.
Do you have any anecdotes, perhaps, that you haven't shared publicly before that you would like to share now that have shaped who you are today?
Melanie, I would say, one, you're doing a very good job of an interview. You're asking me questions that I've not been asked before. And so I want to say that I think you hold great promise. So I do want to compliment you that way. But I would say that there are, like the first beginning part of this project, people really didn't really know what I was doing because archives sound old and dusty and not of much use. And so a lot of times people would, they understood that I gave, events. But they didn't really understand all the work behind what was behind. And so I think in the beginning years, those were really fun years because no one was really paying so much attention. And I was able to envision and dream, in many ways about what could be possible. And so a lot of what people see now, because we're now, as we speak, Stony Brook is actually one of our newest subscribing institutions. So everybody, faculty and students on Stony Brook's campus are going to be able to work with our digital archives. So all 11,000 hours that we've recorded in 413 cities and towns across the United States and in countries where there were African American expatriates, like Norway, the Caribbean, and Mexico. All of that is now available even on your iPhone. So that is exciting to me. But in terms of anecdotes, I guess, like time on the road, I don't often talk about our trips on the road publicly. But if people were, we've always had a small team of usually just the interviewer and the videographer. I would insist on excellence, and so I've been blessed with a very small video team. In fact, Matthew Hickey is with me today as we're recording this, and he was actually our first videographer and has worked with us all this time for 20 years. And so we often will start, at 8 in the morning, and we're often finishing up, 8, 9 o'clock at night, doing 2 interviews a day, 10 in a week. And it's just, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like you're in a constant state of discovery as you sit and interview people for 4 to 5 hours, at a time. And we often call it magical. So the bonding that happens on the road is a very special bonding because they, my crew with me, have built this really one interview at a time. And to see people using it now is just really amazing.
What is your biggest takeaway from your life, from your career, from your success? One piece of advice that you could give us.
I would tell you and anyone else listening to who are just starting your careers that to live a passion-filled life, because I think it's really important to find what you in life are intended to do, though in many ways that can be a lifelong project to do that. I also would say that it's important to be a person of your word, to remember those who've helped you along the way, and also act always with a sense of ethics, because that often has been missing in today's society. But also believe that you will be able to find your purpose and what you're intended to do.
Well, thank you for imparting that wisdom. I totally agree. Thank you, Julieanna, for your time.
We look forward to being part of the Stony Brook family. Thank you, Melanie.
When we come back, my partner Nia will unpack the making of the History Makers. I'm Melanie Formosa.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm Nia Watley, here with Julieanna Richardson. We've learned about your life story, but let's talk about your life's work. So can you tell us a little bit about the History Makers?
Well, the History Makers has grown to be the nation's largest African American video oral history archive. We basically interview Black leaders or people who have also had an inside view in terms of the Black experience. But we interview them about their lives, and we've created the largest attempt to record the Black experience since the WPA slave narratives, which really recorded the lives of former slaves. So there had been no attempt to record the 20th century, and now we're in the 21st century. So that's why it's important. Essentially, we take people, Nia, into the lives of Black people, which I think is really important in the times that we're living in right now.
I completely agree with you. So this is a burning question that I have. Who is your favorite person, if you can pick one? I think I would have to say Michelle Obama, but I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Who's your favorite?
We haven't yet been able to interview Michelle Obama, which is really, we had to wait. We waited too long, and then the election, and then they were in the White House, so we still have to work on that, but she knows that. But one, we actually interviewed President Barack Obama when he was Illinois State Senator, and the day that he came to the office, he was, he talks about being tired because he was having to commute between Chicago and Springfield, and probably was really trying to find a career path, out of the state Senate. After all, he had been the first Black to be head of Harvard Law Review. So I think he was looking at that time. But it was, but the thing so amazing about that interview, it still holds up at the test of time. And when the campaign for presidency was coming, they sent a team here to look at the interview just to check it out. So that, and then another interview that I've liked was Katherine Dunham. She was the inventor of Black dance in this country, and when we went to interview her, she was in her 90s. Harry Belafonte and his wife had moved her to assisted care living facility in New York from St. Louis, where she had moved after her time in Haiti. A lot of things about her interview was just completely fascinating. This is a woman that, when she starred in the film Cabin in the Sky, her legs were insured by Lloyd's of London for $250,000. This is a woman who took a dance troupe without grants, 40 people in a dance troupe. She traveled around Europe and Africa and kept that troupe alive, and it's known as the Dunham technique, and still to this day people study and dance the Dunham technique. And also because she was very, very bright. She studied at the University of Chicago after her brother had studied. So there are lots of intrigue and things around that interview that was really quite amazing. And when we went to interview her, there were always the Dunham dancers there. In fact, we actually, this is unique for us because we usually just interview the person, but we interviewed other dancers and even her daughter who had come over from Italy where she resided.
That's pretty cool. So I know you guys are based in Chicago. How do you pick your interviewees?
We have lists now of people who've been referred to us. We do our own research. Our focus is really trying to build a documentary record of the Black experience across all kinds of disciplines, whether it's the arts or business or civic engagement or politics or religion, music, entertainment, STEM, even fashion and beauty, sports. So we look across that whole spectrum, and we're really trying to document what has not been documented in society. In many ways, I think we see it played out today in the time that we're all living in and that you're coming of age in, that so few know about the Black experience, and that impacts American society as a whole in not such a positive way. And so in many ways, I would refer to myself now as an activist, archivist, even though that's not my training.
That's pretty cool. I was telling my mom I got to interview you today, and so I'm gonna ask her a question when I told her. I was like, I'm interviewing Julieanna Richardson, and so she was like, you need to ask her, how do I become a historian as a Black woman at home? So that's her question.
Well, I mean, everyone right now, we need so much documentation in the Black community. And I would even say outside, I would say what is really documented in American society are white males, not even so much white females. But she should basically get her tape recorder out and start asking questions. And we often, with our process, we go back and try to create the documentary record for, family life. So how far back do you know about your family history, both on your mother's side and your father's side, or anyone else who was important in someone's growing up? And that's really critical, that part. And then, we move forward. One of the questions we've made mandatory is what sights, smells, and sounds remind someone of their childhood. And, in a way of reawakened memory and bringing that to fore. So there are lots of things. So I would tell your mother to take out her tape recorder. The other thing is, how much do you and the family know of your background and, of your family history? Because you could take this opportunity to start learning about that. Because even, Nia, if that is not on your mind sight now, you, like I'm sure your mother in time, you will also be thinking, I wish I'd asked that question. I wish I knew that. And I don't. I never bothered to ask.
I guess going off of that, how did you organize all of the archives so that I can try to help her? Because I'm sure she'll pull her tape recorder out and now she'll have all of this footage. She won't know what to do with it.
Well, let me say that we're all archivists in some respects now, if you have a PDA or a phone, because we're saving photos, we're saving memories. People have their social media accounts, though that should not be necessarily confused with archives because there's a discipline with that. People are trained professionally. I didn't come out of professional training, but I could not have done a project like this unless I immersed myself in the world of archives. And our project has been surrounded by the best of the best. We're housed at the Library of Congress. They became our permanent repository. We became part of the nation's patrimony in 2014. We were the most organized collection that had come in there. And in many ways, they said that, we saved them $1 million because we were so organized. We have a close working relationship with them, so everything has to be, you have to develop a taxonomy, or there's also things like metadata. So you have it extremely organized, what is under childhood, what is under career, what is under family life, what are the occupations. And so that organization allows you then to find things, because at the end of the day, and for the Stony Brook family and working with our digital archive, everything is searchable by image and text. And that work that people see took this organization 18 years to build. Everything's transcribed, everything's searchable now. The new digital archive can be accessed by the seeing and hearing impaired. You can get it on your iPhone, so it's now accessible on the cloud. Those were things that I don't know if I could have thought possible back then. We were taping on videotape, but then in the process during the time period, we've digitized everything that's part of the collection. So that's the main thing, is that's important. And I do want, your mother's interest is of great interest to me, because every day that we don't do interviews and there's someone dying in the Black community, we're losing parts of our history. So I'm majorly concerned not just about the interviews themselves, but the personal collections of the people we interview, whether they be paper records or photographs or emails or AV materials, speeches, reports. I'm so concerned that when loved ones are dying, that the family members are going in just trying to get things situated, and there goes our history being thrown away. Almost forests of history are being thrown away now.
Share that concern with you. I can see, especially from me being so young, I'm 21, when my grandpa pulls out his camera, I'm like, can you put that away? I don't want to take any more pictures. That's not what I want. Poppy, you're always taking pictures. Can we not take a picture today? But I'm understanding from talking to you how important it is that he takes that picture, that he documents that memory. We're not going to remember that time 20 years from now, and he's not always going to be here 20 years from now. So I would definitely bring that back to my family, and I hope that other families adopt it into their lifestyle. Become an archivist.
Right, or mindset, let's put it that way, or practice. Yes. that we all are more intentional about it. I mean, in many ways, your generation is better set up for documentation just because of the notion of social media. So there is that documentation going on, but a lot of the people that are now in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, they never thought of that. And so we're about to lose large swaths of our history if we're not, as successful as we want to be. And we've done, we're the only long-scale recording for a lot of the people that we interview. So when people pass away, family members often are reaching out to us. Because they're learning often about the people that were their loved ones that they grew up knowing.
Thank you for this stunning piece of work. Your archive is now available to all of us here at Stony Brook, and we are so appreciative. I want to say congratulations and good luck on the rest of 2021, Julieanna. Thank you.
And I want to thank you, Nia. Both you and Melanie did a great job today, and I want to also particularly thank the Stony Brook family, and I want to do a special shout out to Professor Zebulon Molesky, because he has been working with the digital archive, and I want everybody to be as excited about using it as he. So it's all there for you as students and faculty to dig in and make things happen with. So I want to thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was a very rich interview with Julieanna Richardson. And really want to thank the students, Melanie Formosa and Nia Watley for that wonderful interview. I think that through that interview with Dr. Richardson, we could feel her passion, and her commitment, and the hard work that she and her organization does to document history. But more importantly, what appealed to me was her emphasis on being an archivist and collecting documentation of our families and our communities so that it can be handed down so that those who come after us understand. Wonderful, wonderful interview. So now we're going to talk about the History Makers experience right here at Stony Brook. As Dr. Richardson mentioned, Dr. Maletsky has been utilizing this digital archive in his work here at Stony Brook. And so we will share his experience. We'll learn about that right now.
Greetings. My name is Dr. Zebulon Maletsky. I am an associate professor of Africana Studies and History at Stony Brook University. And I'm also the co-chair of the Black History Month committee. I want to congratulate Nia Watley and Melanie Formosa for doing such an excellent job in terms of that very eye-opening and elucidating interview with Julieanna Richardson. They just did a wonderful, wonderful job. I am very pleased at this point to share with you some of my experiences having had a chance to work with the History Makers archive. I was the recipient of the Innovations in Teaching Fellowship given by the History Makers for this fall 2020 semester. And that is funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation, and had a chance to basically, we were encouraged to use History Makers in our classrooms and our teaching. And I had a chance to use History Makers. So I thought I'd love to have a chance now to share with you some of the things that we did, how you can use History Makers in your classrooms, with your families, in your communities. And it's my great pleasure to have a chance to do that with you today. This summer, I learned that I would be the recipient of a generous teaching fellowship funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation to encourage professors to use History Makers as part of their classes. I was delighted to be matched with Dr. Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, previous chair of African American Studies at Harvard University and currently chair of the History Department at Harvard. When I first heard of the incredible opportunity for this fellowship, my first thought was, this will really help me, not only in the classroom, but in my research as well. And of course, working with someone like Dr. Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham was not only a great experience, but really a huge honor. And so during the fellowship period, we met periodically, meetings led by Dr. Julieanna Richardson. And in those discussions, we really got a sense of how we can best utilize the History Makers. In preparing for this, I couldn't help but think about this gentleman, Alex Haley, who many of you will no doubt recognize and remember. Alex Haley, who was the author of the book Roots, which was turned into a television miniseries that aired in the 1970s, broke almost every single record for television and viewing audiences at that time, and really transformed our national dialogue about the ability to talk about issues like slavery, to talk about our past in a new way, in the context of family. And so as I was preparing for this, I was thinking, you know, what is a history maker, right? What does it mean to be a history maker? And the profound part of all this, the thing that makes this engine called History Makers run is about oral history. It's the power of oral history and the power of storytelling. And Alex Haley, you know, really was a breakthrough kind of figure in this regard. He retells in this, I don't know if this is on MP3 or not, but it is out there on YouTube. But he retells in this analog fashion about sitting on the porch of his grandmother's home in Henning, Tennessee. He was very close with his grandmother, and during the summer, his relatives, his cousins, his aunts, his great aunts, and so on, older folk, close to the age of his grandmother, perhaps a bit younger, would come to visit. Some would stay for the entire summer, some would stay for just a few weeks. And he explains how every evening after supper, when the dishes had been washed, these ladies, ranging in age about from 40s to 50s, their 50s, would filter out onto the porch and get onto cane bottom rocking chairs. And when they all got to rocking, he compares it, he said it was like so many metronomes. And they started to sort of work into a rhythm and a collective sort of way of movement and of feeling. And they would talk about the self-same thing, a long narrative history of a family. Now, Alex was a young child at this time. He knew that the history of this family went back a long way. And as he sat behind his grandmother's chair, he would listen to the stories that were being told about the old African. He would listen and hear the stories about Kizzy Kinte. He would hear the stories about Chicken George and all of these things that we call oral history, the power of oral history. And these stories never left him. They stayed with him and impelled him and pushed him to one day eventually write about those stories and research those stories. And that brought us what we know as roots. And Alex Haley actually used to taught at Stony Brook University in the Africana Studies department for some time before his somewhat untimely passing. But the idea to him that, you know, that people who he regarded with such great respect, his grandmother, his grandparents, had once been the same age as he was. They would refer to him and they say, you know, when I was not much taller than this youngin right here, waving their hand toward him and so on, and being acknowledged as a young person was very important to him as well. So all of this is about the power of oral history, what it does, the impression that it made on this young man, and what it brought about. And you heard Julieanna talk about her experiences and her background, feeling like she didn't know enough about her own history, which pushed her to pull together this amazing project. And so the other person that he talks about was a woman named Sister Waleda. Sister Waleda, who, if you've ever seen roots, the next generations, or read some of the materials or listened to this album, you find that a lot of the characters that were used were really true to form and really came from real life, same names and everything. And Sister Waleda was a powerful prayer, as Haley would say. Somebody who, for a few coins would pray for the family and pray for good things and good wishes. And so Sister Waleda was somebody who also left an impression on young Alex, and who in later years he would return back to actually several times over, which is described in this wonderful album. And so that also was a part of his focus. That is this serendipitous aspect that led him much like this path that Dr. Richardson described for us. I myself first met Julieanna Richardson at the Oral History Association meeting in Louisville, Kentucky in 2010. And I attended that conference because I wanted to learn more about how to do oral history, I knew the power of oral history, but how could I also use it in my own research? And indeed, so much of my, as I mentioned before, research for my book, it's called Before Busing, Boston's Long Movement for Civil Rights in the Cradle of Liberty. So many of the people who are sort of the unsung heroes, people who were history makers, certainly, but are relatively unknown outside of Boston, and in some cases even in Boston itself. These folks who have led these long movements without attention, without fanfare, and they're all, so many of them are in the History Makers. So what a powerful resource, what a great project. And I want to talk about how you can use it in your work as well. Here's a picture of the facing building in Chicago. History Makers is located in Chicago. And what is the History Makers? The History Makers is the largest collection of African-American video oral histories in the country. The History Makers has been recording and collecting these oral histories for quite some time now. Sitting down with people, oftentimes in their studios in Chicago, but also in other areas as well, recording these precious stories, oftentimes keeping for posterity for many years, these stories that would have been lost but for the History Makers. So the History Makers is a robust primary source research database. When we say primary source, as historians, we're saying and talking about firsthand eyewitness accounts, people who were there, who lived through the history, are considered primary source accounts, unlike secondary source accounts, a book written by a historian or an author, which is giving a secondary account. The History Makers is a rich data set for digital humanities exploration and experimentation. When we're thinking about some of the connections between this sort of newer field known as digital humanities and oral history, the History Makers creates many educational possibilities in order to do this, because it draws upon these oral histories and traditions. It's a way to connect with so many of the digital holdings that are also available, and combined can make for very powerful presentations. And so at the History Makers, they say history is necessary, important, and urgent, Before the history makers, important history was often hidden from view. And speaking of hidden from view, I'm in front, let me move myself, was hidden from view, the only large-scale attempt to document the Black experience since the WPA slave narratives. And for all who may not know, the Works Progress Administration during the New Deal, in order to get artists and writers working again, people were hired to interview living enslaved people who were still alive during the 1930s and 40s. And so if anyone has never heard or have ever wanted to hear, the memories and the oral history straight from the enslaved people themselves, those materials are available and can be found in the Library of Congress and a number of other sources. What are some of the goals and accomplishments? The History Makers was able to create an archival collection of 5,000 African-American video oral histories. That's what makes them the largest. And expose the collection to the widest audience possible using new media outlets, public events, educational programs, and a unique digital archive. Their hope is to preserve this collection for generations to come, to construct a more inclusive and accurate record of American history. And then the other more recent goal was that they were able to donate this collection to a nationally recognized archive. And the History Makers is now part of the National Archives. And that is quite an accomplishment. So a history maker is an African-American by descent who, one, has made significant accomplishments in his or her own life, and or is associated with a particular movement, organization, or association and event or time that is important to the African-American community. The history makers' stories are ones of success against the odds, achievement in the face of adversity, and in all cases, stories of inspiration. They are America's missing stories. Time is constantly moving forward, and we are losing important history and stories every day. Think of someone like Gwen Ifill, managing editor, Washington Week and PBS NewsHour. Charles Ogletree, esteemed civil rights lawyer and Harvard Law School professor, one of Barack Obama's professors, is sadly been afflicted with Alzheimer's, and so is losing one of the greatest legal minds in American history. And Lani Guinier, first African-American female tenured law professor. So this is what's at stake, and this is the kind of history that's being recorded. What can you find in the History Makers? Information about foodways, film and filmmakers, Black arts movement, so important to our theme this year of Black creativity. Learn about funeral rites, understand, what people talk about, how the body looked at a funeral when they had Aretha Franklin's funeral. Public health and medical workers, the makings of modern music, again, creativity, poetry, entrepreneurship, the Black radical tradition, sports, LGBTQ, Shifts in beauty culture, migration in the Black diaspora, so important, especially in the city of Chicago. Black feminism, theology and religious life, our faith life. Henry Louis Gates is about to do a major documentary. It's going to be airing this month, in fact. This is Our Story, This Is Our Song, which is about the Black church. The sciences, Black towns and land ownership. Did you know that there were once independent Black towns in places like Mississippi and other areas? All Black towns. Integration in public life, African survivals, migration in the Black diaspora, shifts in beauty culture, all of these things can be found in the History Makers. Thank you all so much for attending today and for being here with us. I know my co-host also would like to say thank you.
I can just say very briefly that we have a number of areas to thank for not only this event, but Black History Month. So much of the campus has come together and collaborated with the Black History Month Committee, with Dr. Molesky and myself, and they are listed here. And we are very thankful and grateful to you for your support. Members of the Black History Month Committee have been coming together to create a robust calendar for the month of February of a whole host of different events. And we just want to recognize and thank them for the work that they're doing and the work they are continuing to do throughout February and even beyond. Yes, there are virtual programs as well as a few in-person programs ranging from the culinary events that FSA will be presenting to craft nights, movie nights, and game nights. Various programs by student clubs and organizations. The Staller Center has this robust virtual stage performances that will be running throughout the whole month. You can watch that at any point in time. WUSB-FM is doing programming, and our alumni are involved as well. The Black and Latino Alumni Network will host an event for students in conjunction with Africana Studies. And of course, there is the Black History Month closing. Please do mark that on your calendar. Our next really major event that's coming up from the committee is the Open Mic Spoken Word Contest. We got a little taste of what that is like from Benjamin today, but these are all events that are available, and you can check out the Black History Month website. The URL is there at the bottom, very easy, stonybrook.edu/BHM, to get up-to-the-date calendar information about the activities. And in closing, I do want to thank everyone for attending today's program. And certainly, last but not least, want to thank the Office of the Vice President for Equity and Inclusion, Chief Diversity Officer, as well as libraries for really making this opportunity for our university possible at a critical time like this. I encourage everyone to please, throughout the month and even beyond, in the months ahead, to take some time out of your busy schedules to explore the History Makers. It is a phenomenal collective for all of us to learn from, to grow from, and to actually just really become more of an inclusive campus community. So thank you again for everything today. Thank you, Dr. Molesky. Thank you, the panelists who spoke today, for contributing to this event. And I am so appreciative, and we are appreciative of your contributions. Thank you and have a good day.